But my favorite thing to do is I get to pick cover arts. And it's cool. I get to look through these articles that are highly rated and say, oh, this is a good picture, and this is a highly rated article. And these are cover arts that I've picked. Okay, so that's a little bit about the journal. Now I want to start talking about challenges. And one of the first challenges to talk about is metrics. We live in a metric-happy world. We want to reduce everything to one number. If we can reduce everything to one number, then we feel good. So for example, a friend of mine from IBM visited last week, and she just went through her annual performance evaluation, and she is a 2+. Everything she did this last year, the papers she published, the conferences she went to, the accomplishments she made in the lab, they added up to a 2+. And her salary is based on her being a 2+. And you know, we're a university, and we look at rating in U.S. News and World Report, right? Where do we rank? Well, the same thing happens with journals. Everybody wants a number that they can use to evaluate those journals, and the common number to use is the impact factor. So you have to understand the reviewing process. So papers come into us. The first thing that happens is the papers are kind of screened. And the screening says, is this a good paper? Is this a paper that belongs in our journal? I get a number of papers on flux capacitors and zero-point energy and things like that. It turns out that those papers have too much physics in them for Then there's a second model. And this is a model that is used by a lot of journals that are attempting to have a high impact factor, a high metric. And so what these journals do, and this is a particular journal, I have a colleague that works at one, and he sort of fed me some numbers from the journal that I'm not supposed to have, so I'm not going to tell you what journal it is. But in this particular journal, which has an impact factor around 12, they editorially reject over 70% of the papers that come in. Over 70% of them never go out to review. Then, of the ones that are left, about 50% get rejected after the review. So what that means is that they have an acceptance rate of 14%. They publish about 1,000 papers a year, even though they receive about 7,000 papers a year. So there's some questions that come up when you think about this. One of them is, well, it looks like they're really focused on the denominator. They're really trying to reduce the denominator in this ratio to sort of give themselves a high impact factor. The second question that you ask yourself is, were those 6,000 papers that they didn't publish all papers that shouldn't have been published? If they weren't, then they have to be published someplace else. And so it's kind of a funny model when you think about it. One of the other issues that APL is facing is competition. Every day, I don't know about you guys, but I get an email every day with a new journal in it. And they're specialized journals, and they're publishing in the areas that APL has traditionally worked in. Here's one in, it's a Wiley journal. And here's one in materials area. And these all just came out within the last 3 months. Here's one, who's the publisher on that? I forget, Springer. Here's actually an existing journal that's moved into a new area. Computational and experimental physics will now be emphasized. Here is our good friends, American Chemical Society. And American Chemical Society is now publishing a journal in photonics. And the journal in photonics, photonics is a big area for APL. This is a competition. This is something that takes away things from us. And here is our favorite good friend, our colleague, American Physical Society, who would never do anything bad or mean to us. And 2 years ago, they created a new journal in material, or in applied physics, Physical Review Applied, which is a direct competitor with Applied Physics Letter. There was always kind of an unwritten agreement that the American Physical Society would stay fundamental, and applied, and AIP would stay more applied, and the agreements now, it's just out and out war. The razor wire has been strung. And this is by country, and what you can see is that China is the largest submitter of papers to APL. They're not the largest country for published papers, but they're getting pretty close, actually. but their rejection rate is much higher in API. And this is true across journals. It creates some really interesting kind of challenges for journals. This is just another graph. It's from the National Science Foundation that shows this rapid growth. What you can see is the EU and the United States dropping as a percentage of papers, and the third world and China in particular growing as percentage of papers. They're now up to about 11% of the science and engineering papers. There's concerns about the quality. I already said that we don't accept nearly the fraction of those papers as we do from other countries. There's a lower citation rate for Chinese papers. In fact, the citation rate is growing within China, but it's actually decreasing right now, or staying the same for papers that come from authors who are outside of China. What does it mean for the future? This is my view. I don't know if it's right or not. When I was little, I bought toys that were made in Japan. And what it meant was it was going to break. The quality was awful. Those of you that are my age may remember that. These days, a product made in Japan is a high quality product. We want cars made in Japan because those are cars that are going to last, that are well engineered and manufactured. It was a country that was growing. It was going through its industrial revolution, and it managed to pick its image up from this sort of low cost kind of place to a real powerhouse. And I believe that there's so much opportunity, money in China that it's going to do the same thing. And I think publishers have to hitch their wagon to that, help them become better scientists, and then develop a new community of loyalty in another country. I think that reviewing is going to change. And I think whoever figures out how to capture the next generation of people and the way they look at things and the technology that they use is going to have a leg up in this. And so I've gone a little long, but thank you for listening to me and thank you for coming.